Welcome, everybody, to episode 4 of AMI Momentum. Today, we're talking about the enterprise scale and enterprise impact of GitHub Copilot. The AI Momentum series is all about a variety of different topics, helping your organization unlock key capabilities that are required to move beyond pilots and proof of concepts and really scale AI value within your organization. So with this, would like to do some introductions. I'm your host, Jeremy Bierlein. I'm a principal technology strategist here at Lantern. What that means is I work with customers early in our conversations about how they're integrating and leveraging AI to drive value in their organizations. With me today, I'm so thrilled to have Esteban Garcia, head of GitHub AI Solutions. Esteban, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jeremy. Hi, everyone. My name is Esteban Garcia. Really excited to join you in this series of AI Momentum here at Lantern. As Jeremy mentioned, I'm the head of GitHub AI Solutions, which means I lead the GitHub business here at Lantern. Myself, I have 25 years of experience. About 15 years of those have been in the Microsoft world. Microsoft MVP for the past 13 years, specifically around developer technologies and Azure. And also I'm a Microsoft regional director. And I've been in the GitHub space for the past 6-7 years. So right where Microsoft and GitHub meet, that's where my expertise is and my teams as well.
Thrilled to have you today here, Esteban, and excited to unpack sort of our learning so far as we've journeyed with organizations on GitHub. A little bit of a preview on what we're doing today here. We'll start with the evolution of GitHub Copilot. It's probably people's first step into the ecosystem. Then Esteban is going to walk us through some flows. One of our goals with AI Momentum is that there are practical bits. We recognize that we are encountering folks at a variety of different places within their teams, within their enterprises at the end of the day. So this will be some of the places where you'll leave with some tips, tricks, and things you can apply today in your organization. Then we'll talk more broadly about moving from those pilots to sustained enterprise impact, a little bit of the agentic future of software development. Esteban is rocking the Future is Agentic t-shirt, which was recently featured on an article about agentic development for the Associated Press. Then we'll close out with a checklist for enterprise success. So as you're thinking about people, process, and technology, what are all the things that need to come together to make that happen? And we'll leave some time for QA. Again, feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and then when we get to QA, we'll look there. We'll also have you come off mute to go ahead and answer questions. So one of the things we like to do with the AI Momentum series, if you've been with us, is we take this AI maturity spectrum and AI maturity journey that's been provided by Microsoft, and we revisit it from multiple angles. So for example, episode 1, we had Suzanne Williams, who leads our strategy practice, talking about the people and enterprise enablement side of AI and moving through this maturity curve. Episode 2, we had Pyramid Jeff Johnston talking a little bit about data readiness and the impact it has on AI velocity in the organizations. Episode 3, I was joined by Soumya Bhatt, our partner technology strategist from Microsoft, and she and I talked a little bit about all the different ways that you can practically get started in agentic. And today, the slice that we're going to take through this is really where a lot of, frankly, the Gen AI conversation started more than 2 years ago, which is really the impact of generative AI on the software delivery process, software development lifecycle, end to end. So we always also start with this because we recognize that every organization, in some cases, multiple different teams and organizations, may be at different stages for different techs and different slices across this spectrum. So with that, I'd like to start actually with our first poll question here. You will do a couple of these. These help us, myself and Esteban, really tailor the conversation today by understanding where you all are. So in a moment, you'll see a pop-up. You may need to scroll to get all of the answers. And really the intent behind this poll, this one is a click all that applies. So you can select more than one. This is which AI-assisted coding tools has your organization used or explored. So select as many that apply. We'll go ahead. You can see the results popping up in the meeting chat as you go ahead and click. So please take a moment, start clicking in on your answers here. We'll give it just a minute. Oh, answers are starting to come in. That's excellent. We'll just give it another minute or two. And again, this helps us really tailor the conversation for you today. All right, not surprisingly, GitHub Copilot leading the way. Always
Yeah, and I see
fascinating. What's it? Go ahead, Esteban. Yeah.
quite a few people starting on their journey as well, right? I think quite a few people, as you'll see later on the talk, a lot of people kind of get stuck on the we're trying it out phase and kind of not coming out of it. But it's also, as you said, not surprising that just over 50% of people on this session have at least some experience with GitHub Copilot. There's certainly a few choices out there.
Excellent. All right, with that, Esteban, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Jeremy. Let's start by setting the stage of the evolution of GitHub Copilot. As Jeremy mentioned, 2-3 years ago, GitHub Copilot made big launch into this world. And what a lot of people saw it as pretty much a fancy autocomplete tool, if you will. It could generate some code, it could help you prototype things. But now we've evolved into a completely different era. Copilot has grown into this platform. It really spans the ability to write code, to plan, to document your code, to do pull requests. And now, as we look ahead, we're starting to see these agentic workflows that can reason, plan, and execute tasks. For a minute there, AI assistants were thought of just a way to get vibe coding going. It was the thing for a little bit. But then as an industry, we realized that the value of an AI coding assistant goes way beyond just crafting a POC with a few prompts over a weekend, but it's really more about enabling teams to go faster through a platform that supports it. This is where a lot of the pilots stall. We saw it with the poll. Quite a few people have tried a few different things. A few people haven't even tried anything yet. You start with a small group of people trying out the tools, and they never really take you beyond just using it within your IDE. And then never really get to a point where you have a repeatable process, scalable process. So if you ever really thought about what Copilot is, because you saw it, what it was 2 years ago, you saw what it was a year ago, you saw what it was even 6 months ago, I'm going to invite you to go back and take a look at and reset what your mind thinks of what these tools are. The world just keeps moving super fast and it's going deeper and deeper into this new agentic future. As my teacher says, the future is agentic. So think about it that way. So let's level set on the different ways that you can access GitHub Copilot today. One of them is through inline. So in your IDE, your favorite IDE, whether Visual Studio, VS Code, JetBrains, or wherever you write code, it really helps you refactor code, generate code, reduce some of the boilerplate that you might be working with on a day-to-day basis. It's a really great way to think of as a productivity in motion, right? You're already using the tool, you add some new functionality to your IDE, and here it goes. Now you're more productive. Well, that really is the fancy autocomplete that I mentioned earlier. Then the other option is for you to start opening up a chat window. This is where you start reasoning with the AI, where you start, chat becomes like part of your team. It understands your code. It's able to make changes to multiple files. It's able to explore architecture of your application, generate tests, maybe help you debug. The next generation, the next phase of this is agentic. That's the new frontier. This is where agents start taking multi-step tasks. You're able to collaborate. You're able to orchestrate what these agents are doing. You're able to even create your own custom agents that are going to execute across multiple tools. Someone earlier asked about Playwright. Someone asked about MCPs, about being able to do all these different things. So that's where the agentic future takes us. So understanding these differences helps us understand where the value comes from and how you can communicate that value to your team, to your organization. When Copilot launched, as I mentioned earlier, it was really about autocomplete, and the way it's evolved, it's been around making sure that you're able to access through the IDE, like most of you have probably accessed it, but through GitHub.com as well, in the way that you're able to go into an issue, assign that issue to a Copilot agent so you can do some maybe spec-driven development, assign it PRs to it, so pull requests. Someone made some changes and you have a backlog of pull requests that maybe goes back. I have 30 PRs I have to look at. What if you have a helper, an agent that can go look at those PRs for you, at least do a first pass and give you some confidence that the code that's coming through from your team, it's passing the test cases, it's following your standards. It shows up in agent mode. It shows up in agent HQ, in this Copilot workspace. There's all these different point places throughout the platform that Copilot shows up. So each one of those surfaces drives a different productivity gain. When we talk about scaling Copilot, we're really talking about standardizing and optimizing workflows across all these surfaces. It's not just about how you work with Copilot in your IDE. So again, if you haven't thought about all the different ways that Copilot works today, this is a great moment to reset during this session. Something really important is happening. Copilot is quickly becoming the starting point of modern software development. Enterprises are seeing a daily and weekly active usage at high levels, with 90% of the Fortune 5 companies reported that GitHub Copilot is used within their organization. This big shift is being realized by Copilot. Before we used to say that Copilot is a product that you use. Before we're like, okay, here's the product. Now it's really becoming part of the fabric of software development. It's not just this little tool that you use on your side. Copilot is part of the way that I work. It's my coworker, it's my agent that's doing things on my behalf. Also, the way it's impacting developers is that Copilot is showing a lot of improvements in developer satisfaction. Over 90% of developers in a study found that they are more fulfilled with their job when they're using GitHub Copilot. And 95% of them say they enjoy coding more with GitHub Copilot's help. I can speak for myself. A year ago, I wasn't writing a lot of code. My background is writing code. I've worked code for a living for a long time. I am writing code again because Copilot is giving me the ability to get back into it and do some things I couldn't do before. So it's a joy to write code again. Let's take a quick pause for another poll. So with this one, if you're using or evaluating Copilot, where are you in your adoption journey? We should see it pop up in a second. There it goes. Yeah, I'd love to hear where you are. I've talked about the different places where you can be, whether you're actively using Copilot for business or enterprise, you're just using it internally as with your individual licenses, you're running as a pilot, you're testing it informally, trying to get your team to be convinced that this is the way, you're thinking about it, you haven't really started yet, or you're not really considering it this time. I'd love to know where you are in this journey, and I'll make sure that I align the talk based on this. The majority of you, about 32%, you're actively building with Copilot for business or enterprise. That's great. Some of you are using your own licenses or just a private individual license, or going through some pilot or testing informally. And actually, Tyler is planning to start evaluating soon. Thanks for sharing that, and definitely keep voting on these things as you go through. I'd love to hear more about what are you trying to do and how you are, where you are in your journey. Hopefully, with what you're going to see today, you're going to get some ideas on how you can continue on this journey. And you see a little bit later, we have found that there's some places in the journey where the people get stuck. There's also some awareness around functionality in the tooling that might help you accelerate where you're going. All right. I'm going to do a little bit of damage, right? You didn't just show up to watch me talk and look at some fancy slides. So I just want to show you some of the GitHub Copilot in action. I'm going to show you a few different places, though. I'm going to show you Copilot action in your VS Code. We talked about inline, talked about chat, but I'm also going to take you to github.com, to GitHub Enterprise, to show you where GitHub Copilot can help you and your team realize some of these productivity gains that we talked about. I have a .NET application using a minimal API, and my team has asked me to add a couple of new functions to this application. I'm first going to show you how to do it through the inline, so Control-I, if you will, so I can pop it up and have a conversation with Copilot. I need to add a new function that's going to check how many days are between two different dates. And then once I tell it what I'm looking for, I'm able to select which model it should use. So you can see I have all these different models that have been enabled in my organization. I can delegate to an agent, or I can go ahead and do it right here in the IDE. Once I hit enter, it's going to look through my code. It's going to figure out how am I going to make sure this code looks like everything else. It gives me a suggestion, and then I accept it because it looks exactly what I was looking for. Now that's one way to do this. The other way to do this is by communicating through comments. So here I wrote the comments of what I'm looking for. The moment I finish writing the comments of a new validation, Copilot suggested this code. I tab into it. So that's the first code block. I tab into it again. It gives me a second code block. Now I'm able to achieve all these things within my IDE, both in line with that. While I'm writing code, I'm not having to come out of my IDE, go into a different tool. Everything just happens here within the context of the code that I'm writing. It's going to look through my project. It's going to figure out what is the type of naming convention standards that I use, and it's going to do it that way. Now, another way that we can collaborate with Copilot is through the Copilot chat on the right-hand side. As you can see, I selected ask mode on the bottom left. And imagine I just joined a team and I need to understand, what does this code look like? Someone asked me to go make some changes. Before I start making some changes, I need to understand the architecture behind it. Again, I can pick the model and I go. Once I do, this is actually going through my entire workspace to understand it. And it's going to come back and let me know what is it that I'm dealing with. Imagine joining a brand new team. How long would that take you? That could take you days, weeks. This is a pretty simple application. This might take me 4 or 5 hours. Now it took me 3 minutes, right? Now it's giving me the architectural overview. It's telling me about my technology stack. It's telling me about the important components of the application. It's telling me that I have some test cases. Great. We have test cases. It's showing me that I have what is the API design pattern that we're following, and where are the configuration files. With this, I have a map. I know where I can go, where I need to go to be able to make some changes to my application. Well, they told me that I have test cases. So it'd be great to know whether the test cases that we have are actually covering all my functionality. So now let me ask it that. So here goes. The other way around, I would have to run all the test cases. I would have to look at the code coverage. Here it tells me, here are the test cases that we have. And it's going to tell me how much coverage I have, about 25% of my code. So guess what? I'm actually not going to be that confident to go in here. So I'm going to actually go and create more test cases because it feels like at 25%, we're not doing very well. So now I moved it into the plan mode at the bottom left. And I just said, hey, let's go ahead and add test cases to validate a phone. So I went from ask mode, where I was asking a lot of questions. So I went to a plan mode. So in the plan mode, I said, hey, let's go ahead and tell me, how would you implement this? I need you to add this new test case. Tell me, what is going to be your plan for this? But I don't need you to do this yet, but I need you to tell me, how would you do it? Because if I don't agree with that plan, I'm not going to say, go do it, right? Now that it told me exactly what it's going to do, it's going to add a test method to a specific file. It's going to create my test case. It's going to create a couple test cases, actually. And it's giving me things that I can think about a little bit more. With that, I want to say, hey, let's go ahead and start the implementation of this. Once I say start implementation, it's going to start thinking about, okay, what was the plan that I told you? It's going to, if you see at the bottom left on my chat, I went from plan to agent mode. So then I went and it's going to make the changes to my file. It's going to show me what it did. It's going to open up integrations test, and it shows me the test case right there. So now I can go through and think about, okay, is this the right implementation? I can go make some changes. I can keep or undo this. And as you can see, it's saying, hey, we want to run some test cases. This agent is running on my behalf, but it doesn't have full control of my machine. It's still asking, stop and say, hey, is it okay if I run this? And I can choose to allow or not allow this. I'm going to leave the running the test cases for later since we don't have a ton of time today. But just think about what just happened today with this demo. I went from explaining to GitHub Copilot what I was trying to get accomplished. I saw a plan, and now it told me the plan. I like the plan. I said, hey, I'll go ahead and execute on that. So now let's go to probably the more fun part of this demo. So I made those changes. I did a pull request for the couple changes that I showed you. You can see the pull request here. I added new endpoints and some test case coverage. You can see the commits that I had here. And I actually don't have anyone from my team available. So I'm going to assign this pull request, this code review, to GitHub Copilot. So right now I just picked Copilot from the reviewers. You can see that Copilot is now assigned, and it's thinking about it. It's trying to spin some things up so he can review my code changes and give me some feedback on that. Once you get going, it takes a minute for just compute to get going. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. You're going to see that Copilot is it's being assigned. It requested a code review. In a minute, you're going to see that it's going to start working on it. Here it should come out. There it goes. So Copilot started reviewing my code. So it's letting me know that it's happening. So once Copilot starts reviewing my code, I can go and view the review session in progress. You can see what it's doing. On the left-hand side, I can see the work that it's doing. On the right-hand side, I can see my pull request. So I have full context of everything that's going on. I can see I can go back to the pull request if I would see more information here, and then I can go back to the session so I can see what's going on. While the session is happening, I can interact with the Copilot coding session so I can give it some feedback on what it's doing. And as it completes, it'll give me some information about the review that it did. So I scroll down here at the bottom of the pull request, you'll be able to see what it tells me. So you can see a pull request overview at the bottom. It tells me what this PR did. It's going to tell me the changes that I reviewed. It generated 4 comments on my reviews. And our Copilot agents out there taking a look at my code, judging my code, if you will, and it's telling me what could be changed or what could be improved with this code, right? So at this point, I can say, yeah, I accept it. But at the same time, I'm going to say, you know what? Yes, I accept your changes, and your suggestions are actually pretty good, Copilot. So why don't we go ahead and implement your suggestions? You see the implement suggestion button at the bottom. And I'll say, yeah, I think that seems wise to me. So I might click on that, and that's going to create a comment that's going to generate a new pull request, right? So now I'm saying, yes, we're done with this one change. Hey, Copilot, let's go ahead and create this new pull request, and you work on it, right? So I wrote some code with the help of GitHub Copilot. I assigned the code, a pull request to GitHub Copilot. He reviewed it. He found some issues with it, suggested some changes. And now I'm going to go and watch Copilot Copilot agent and code those changes as a brand new pull request so that I can go back and review later. You can see I can go and look at this session that's being worked on right now. GitHub Copilot starting up. Someone earlier asked about Playwright. There's a web application, so it's going to spin up and it's going to be able to test some things. I can see everything it's doing. And at the bottom left, there's a window that says steer active sessions while Copilot is working. I'm not just giving up control to Copilot to say, hey, go do what you want to do. As I see things happen, I can say, wait, you forgot this, or wait, also add this one thing, or why are you using that framework? So I can have conversations with Copilot so we can steer the active session while Copilot is working. As Copilot completes things, I can see exactly which files it changed. It shows me exactly what it's doing. So it's a pretty powerful way for me to be able to interact with Copilot and watch it to see which work, both from a reviewing perspective, but also from a code writing perspective, which is now the thing that allows me to just really get a lot more of that functionality and a more ability to go a little bit faster. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to show that because it really shows the power that you get out of Copilot. There's no magic tricks on that one. No smoke and mirrors. It's just out of the box functionality from GitHub Copilot, which is pretty cool. Now, the one thing I want you to take away from that, these are repeatable workflows. These are things that you and your team can standardize. And these are the type of things that allow you to scale. This is the consistency of these outcomes that allow you and your team to scale beyond a single person or multiple teams. What do you think, Jeremy?
What's really fascinating to me is one of the things we talk a lot about is with AI adoption patterns and AI usage patterns. A lot of the first use cases out of the gate were really about individual productivity. And you really showed that in those first 2 demos, whether it's that autocomplete on steroids and then some, or being able to quickly profile a project that you've joined in the code base that you're going to be stepping into. And then really the third demo, what we're seeing is moving from that individual productivity piece to really almost having that agentic coworker and really being able to say, okay, I'm not just going to use it as a personal productivity tool. I'm actually able to task it as a virtual coworker. I'm expanding the team size, if you want to think about it that way. And I know that's actually in some organizations that we've worked with, that's one of the ways that they're starting to talk about these tools like GitHub Copilot. This isn't just an individual productivity story. This is literally, I've added a virtual member to the team.
Yeah, exactly. That virtual member, that's how we should be thinking about it. They are doing something on your behalf. You're asking them to do something. You're the one that's in control. That's super important. You're not just saying Copilot will do its thing. You as a team are able to create things like instruction files. You're able to have very specific Copilot agent instructions. These are markdown files that kind of describe to the agent how it should behave. It describes to the agent what are the naming standards that we follow, what are the different frameworks that we use. So that's a really important distinction that we need to think about when we're talking about GitHub Copilot.
So you've given us a great applied sort of tips and tricks. I imagine there'll be some people on this call who take this away today and start doing new and interesting things. How does this begin to look if you lens out and say, great, how do I move this? Maybe I've got a team that's using it. Maybe I've got parts of the organization that experiment. How does this really scale? And what are organizations looking at for value levers?
Yeah, let's go there and let's talk about some of the scaling things that we do, right? Because I think when you think about the way organizations move through this, is that a lot of them start with an awareness. Hey, we heard that this GitHub Copilot thing is pretty cool. We saw it at a conference or we read about it. Someone told me about it. Then they go into a pilot. Hey, let's try this out. A small group. There's no shared metrics on what is it that we're trying to accomplish other than just saying, hey, let's try out GitHub Copilot. Then we go into a team expansion. Then we go into enterprise adoption. Not every organization starts with a pilot, but almost all of them fall into the same traps. They isolate Copilot to too small of a group. They don't really set shared metrics. You might have a team on the right that's trying to do one thing, and another team over there is trying to do something else. The biggest problem that we see is that they treat it as a tool to experiment with instead of a capability to operationalize it. Hey, you guys try Copilot, and whoever can do well with it, great. And otherwise, well, that's it. But if you think about it as a new capability that your team has, a new superpower, a new agentic team that's helped by this AI tool, the narrative is very different. The way that you measure value, the way that you measure how well things are going, the way that you measure ROI is completely different. So pilots tend to give you those early wins, but don't really show you how to scale. I think that most organizations that we run into are somewhere between pilot and team expansion. Team expansion where all of a sudden one pilot worked out. We have another team over there doing another pilot. So now we have multiple teams adopting Copilot. We have some early wins, but uneven workflows. That team did it that way. That team does it for most things, but no PRs. Well, there's no real way to know whether it's working. And then now leadership is okay. Now we have 3, 4, 5 teams using it. Now let's start getting some metrics and let's put some governance around it. And ideally, we want to move all the way to the right when we start scaling Copilot. And in order to do that, you need, number one, a clear operating model. How are we going to operate with 250, 500, 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 developers? We need to capture meaningful metrics. And meaningful metrics shouldn't just be, hey, how many more lines of code do we get to write today versus a month ago when we didn't have Copilot? More code is being generated, but is the right code being generated? Do we have more PRs coming through? Is our security posture good? Do we have more builds happening? Do we have less bugs coming through? Of course, things like how many user stories are we completing are very important, but the meaningful metrics that really let us know whether we're building the right software faster, that's the important stuff. We need organizational alignment. Make sure that we have a network that supports sustainable adoption across organization. So like dev influencers that are able to go around and helping others throughout the organization be successful with GitHub Copilot. It might not be the most senior folks. It might not be the new people. It just might be the people who really get this agentic development. And then finally, of course, governance and enablement. It's really important. Without these pieces, even the strongest pilots with the most support, they just stall. You're like, okay, we got it working for this one team. Then what? We don't know how to get it to the second team or third team. But if you're able to put these pieces in place, the momentum accelerates really quickly, and it's beautiful to see. And then when we start thinking about the long-term AI value, we got organizations to look at developer productivity, developer experience, and organizational velocity. So these are some of the metrics that every organization looks a little different, and obviously we meet them where they are. But things like cycle time, PR review throughput. Okay, we sometimes walk into our company and they tell, oh yeah, we go really fast, but then we have a bottleneck. We have 35 pull requests that are sitting there, and some of them are like a month old. We don't know what to do with them. It's like Copilot could help. I just showed you a sample of that. Rework reduction. Hey, we thought we were done and then it wasn't done. So we have to redo it again. So reducing some of that. Time savings on repetitive work. And these are like really measurable and very meaningful. The developer experience is like one of the most underrated outcomes of Copilot. Developers report they feel more in the flow. They feel less frustrated. They feel more confident when navigating unfamiliar code. If I walk into a brand new project, if I'm jumping between projects and the first thing I can say, explain this project to me, and I get a nice report I can go read, that's great. That gives me so much farther than navigating through some landmines I might run into some code. And this improves retention, onboarding, and team health. And then, of course, organizational velocity. That's a big one that we look at, where AI starts influencing lead time, starts influencing deployment frequency, starts influencing incidents and defects. That's where the business starts seeing the connection between AI and the competitive advantage that you're going to be able to get by adopting this platform. Again, not just a tool that some people are using, but a platform and that we're all using as a strategic advantage. And then when we think about setting our clients up for success, we think about these 4 long-term success patterns, because it's great that you're going to get that spike of productivity. And then after a month, you're like, everyone stops going back to their old ways or not using the platform the way that we want them to continue being successful. So the first pattern is, it really starts with leadership alignment. If leaders treat Copilot as a tool and experiment, the adoption is going to stall in the earlier stages. If leaders treat it as a capability that transforms how software is built, you're going to unlock real momentum. And this next pattern is, and this is really where most organizations succeed and fail. When I see someone that kind of got stuck, it's around training, developer enablement. And that can take them so many ways. You can start with a really big boot camp that might be seen by everyone in the team. And then you start doing some hands-on onboarding, creating a community of practice that's going to help drive this forward. This world is changing. Every month, there's a new feature. So how do you know about these features? How do you know about using these features? Assigning or inviting people to become Copilot champions in your organization. Enablement is really the multiplier that really helps this thing scale in a way that's like really fast. And to make it sustainable, you have to integrate it into your structure, making it part of your coding standard, documenting those as part of the Copilot instructions, making sure that your pull request workflows include Copilot then, making sure they have testing patterns that Copilot is aware of so they can create better test cases that follow your patterns. And then documentation routines. Copilot is really good at documenting code. And guess what? Developers don't like to document code. So why don't you bring along your best friend Copilot to help you document your code and keep it evolving over time? And those are like the rails that make AI consistent across team. But then finally, governance and guardrails. Sometimes we think of governance as something that slows people down. We actually see it differently. I think good governance removes ambiguity. Good governance creates clarity and it enables scale. And those are the patterns that we work with our clients to be able to continue on and be successful with this. So we are very clear. The future is agentic. So we're making a big bet on the fact that our world is changing. As a software developer, the way I build software today is different than it was 2 years ago. And it's going to be so different than it 2 years from now or a year from now. I remember a month or so ago talking to someone about, and if a year ago you were asking me what did the future look like in the agentic world, I was like, yeah, we're like 5 years away from that. And then a year later, we're there. Things are just moving so fast. It's just pretty unbelievable. So we're really entering the era where developers don't just ask AI for suggestions. They collaborate with agents that can plan and execute these tasks. Changes everything from architecture decisions to DevOps practices. 2-3 weeks ago, I gave a talk on agentic in CI/CD, right? Working with an agent to help me build better CI/CD pipelines. And it was pretty interesting to think about it from that perspective, not just from the developer's perspective. So agentic DevOps is really the next evolution of the way that we are working, the way that we're building code, and where we're going. I think that knowing that we're going to get to a point where we're going to be working with agents much more effective way means that in order for me to be effective there, I need to create a foundation for myself. I need to create a foundation for my team. I need to create a foundation for my company. Because when that world arrives very quickly, we want to be ready and we want to already be thinking with agents in mind. When we think about both Microsoft and GitHub, they've been very clear about where this is going. We should be thinking about agent mode. We know whether we should be thinking about building or creating custom agents. You're able already to define custom agents within the framework of GitHub Copilot on GitHub Enterprise. And then the next iteration of that is going and building your own agents using Microsoft Foundry and then bringing them in to help you build your software. Using agents to build agents. That's the next part. And then the next part is orchestrating workflows. So I'm a developer. I've been writing code for 25 years. Well, if I can think and take a little step back and start orchestrating the work that needs to happen to be able to build an enterprise-grade application, not just a weekend project, but really an enterprise application that says, I have this one agent that's really good at writing web applications. I have this other agent that's great about writing my test cases. I have this other agent that understands the world of healthcare. So I can make sure that I'm writing code that's going to work really well in an environment that's going to be regulated in the healthcare world, for example. So now I'm starting to gain even more value from these agents. So as we start thinking about what should we be looking at from an enterprise success journey, so investing in enablement. So enable your developers. That's the most important thing. Just saying, here's Copilot, good luck, and it'll get you somewhere. But there's so much to this new agentic world that really thinking about how do we enable them, standardizing workflows, really making GitHub Copilot part of the way that you work, not just, hey, there's that one tool that people use, to really being standard about the way that you work with the entire platform, measuring impact along the way as you start implementing new phases of your enablement, as you go from pilot to multiple teams to scale. Make sure you're measuring that impact and whatever makes sense for you. So different organizations are going to be measuring different things, but be very clear on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Make sure that you're very aligned between leaders and developers on what it is that we are trying to accomplish as an organization. Why are we doing this? Then treat Copilot as a long-term capability. I think I've said that a couple of times, right? It's not just a tool, it's a capability that's going to continue evolving. This new world of agentic development, the new world of having AI assistant with you is one that's changing the way that our industry goes. So this is how organizations have loved durable AI-driven innovation velocity. So with that, Jeremy, why don't we take us to the next poll?
All right. So for those of you who are experimenting with, have started using Copilot or other parts of the Git platform within your organization, what do you feel is the urgency around continued adoption, realization of value? We have some organizations for whom they're enjoying the experiment, other organization where there's significant expectation from technology leaders, business leaders in the organization to say, how are we infusing AI and agentic into our software delivery lifecycle? So I'm seeing answers coming in. All right, we have some people who are clearly feeling some organizational fire around that, almost half. By the way, that's pretty typical in the organizations we work with, that they have this real drive to seek to understand and to leverage more. We'll give it a couple more minutes coming in here. All right. This actually feels a lot like some of the other adoption bell curves that we've been seeing in other AI technologies, not just within the software delivery lifecycle. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And Esteban, thank you so much for walking us through. We'll go to questions here in just 1 minute, but I want to just do a recap on some things that we saw. Some of the things that are underneath, and there are some of the issues that we're seeing right now that you highlighted that are really ways we're getting organizations accelerated on this journey. First of all, a lot of organizations, maybe they're growing by acquisitions, maybe they give a lot of freedom to their development teams across an organization, but we're seeing fragmented repositories, overall disorganization. Really, what you've impressed on me in our conversations together is this is a great opportunity for organizations to take a fresh look at really architecting and optimizing their repository footprints for all of the possibilities that are ahead in the agentic future. Likewise, we've seen it on just this call and some of the feedback that we've gotten. The GitHub usage and consistency really vary across the organization. This isn't a technology thing necessarily, but really a people, process, and capability piece. So one of the things that I know we've leaned in with several organizations is to really think about how do you upskill the people and the process side of the equation with, for example, we'll do GitHub Copilot mastery sessions to really help give everybody a same view on all of the other pieces and parts. And then lastly, security is omnipresent, regardless what part of the organization that you're in. And I think you alluded to it a couple of times. I think for those organizations that are maybe a little bit further along with their AI assisted development journey, or not even, security is often bolted in. It's often a later addition into the process, or it's, hey, yeah, we're done. We're through all our unit and integration and smoke testing, and now we're gonna think about applying it. It's a late add. And so really there's an opportunity here with GitHub Advanced Security to apply security more comprehensive throughout the lifecycle. So just three specific ways that I think that we've been going after some common challenges to really realizing the value out of this. There's plenty of other ways too. We always welcome those sorts of conversations. With that, would love to open it up for questions. I know that Esteban, you've been looking at some of the questions that we've been getting in the meeting chat here. Is there one of them that you wanted to kick off and start? And while he's answering that question, he'll put up our QR codes to our LinkedIn up on the screen. So feel free to connect with us here in that way as well. But Esteban, do you want to start picking off questions from the chat here? And if you have questions, feel free to put them in.
Yeah, so going from bottom up, Chris asked whether the agent remembers prior conversations and conversations across developers is a fresh session every time. It's a fresh session every time you say, I want to start a new chat. So everything that you have in your chat is going to keep it going. And I actually, depending on what it is that you're doing, I tend to start a new chat every time I'm saying, okay, now I'm going to do a new task. GitHub Copilot understands everything that's in your code. So if you're within VS Code and you have 50 files or 100 files within your workspace, it's going to be able to read all those and you're able to give it additional context. So I typically, when I'm saying, hey, I want to do something, a specific task, I have one chat that's only about that task. And then when I'm done with that, I create a new chat so I can have new context. So I don't want it remembering about the test case I created. I want to do something different. Likewise, when a different developer might have a different chat, we cannot see each other's chats. That's from a context perspective. There's another question from Tyler about most of our development work is around Power Platform. Can Copilot support Power Platform development as well? In some ways, right? So I'm not a Power Platform developer myself. We have quite a few amazing Power Platform people here at Lantern, but there are ways for you to be able to integrate GitHub Copilot within your test authoring, for example. I can post a link here from Microsoft that talked about how you can leverage GitHub Copilot for test authoring. So anytime there's code involved, you're able to have Copilot help you with that. Someone asked, Josh, you asked if Copilot is available for code reviewer in ADO. No. So Microsoft and GitHub made a joint statement right around build this year, where they said that if you're looking to take advantage of the AI capabilities of GitHub Copilot, your repos need to live in GitHub. That means that you can leave your pipelines and your boards in Azure DevOps. And the moment that you move your repos into GitHub, you're able to take advantage of these new agentic capabilities, which also means that there's a capability that we're able to go to a work item in Azure DevOps, and you can assign that work item to GitHub Copilot agent to implement that feature, as long as the repo lives in GitHub. It is not available if your repo lives in ADO, but it is available if your repo lives in GitHub, even if everything else that you're working with is in ADO, which answers Praveen's question, whether it is mandatory to move your repository from Bitbucket to GitHub. Now, you can use GitHub Copilot in VS Code if your code lives in different repos, but to get the full platform, which is a lot of what I was showing you today, you have to have your repo. You can leave everything else in other places, but at least your repos need to be in GitHub, and that lights up a lot of what you saw today. I saw, Darren, how easy is it to share custom agents with other members of your team? So your custom agents, if by custom agents, you mean that the custom agents that you're able to create that leverage the GitHub Copilot agent infrastructure, if you will, the agent is assigned to your repo. So as long as your other members are part of the same repo, they can use it. It's the markdown file that you use to be able to define that agent is stored in the repo, and anyone that has access to that repo will be able to get access to that custom agent, and it will show up under your little drop-down list on VS Code, and also you're able to assign it on GitHub.com. Did I miss any others, Jeremy?
I think we got a couple in here, and then I see one hand up. Kane.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, so I had actually had a question around more of the conversation around AI and adoption. what was shown here was really great in terms of showing how we're essentially like shifting left this idea of an iterative approach to development. And I think all that's great. I think also in terms of a discussion around adoption in my own life, I've had discussions with senior or more seasoned developers who have hesitation around adoption of AI just because it can be misinterpreted as like this easy button. How do we structure conversations with those folks and make sure we're not excluding them from like these pilot phases in terms of governance and how we're keeping developers in the loop from start all the way up to the full scale adoption and making sure that their voices are heard and their opinions are understood as it relates to adopting AI? Does that make sense? That was a long question.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. A great question. I think that it's really important to make sure you take everyone's perspectives in mind as you're starting your journey. I think that in some cases I've seen organizations lean too heavily towards saying, let the senior developers lead. And sometimes there is a little hesitation with AI there. Other times you can have some people who are like earlier in career who come as almost AI natives, right? I think that the reality is that people with different experiences bring a lot to the table. I think that we have to remember that even though we have Copilot at our side, having solid software engineering practices is a great asset because ultimately you're leading the Copilot to build something on your behalf. If I don't know how to write a nuke, it's not going to do it for me because I won't know how to ask it to do it. So there's some things that are really important to understand. And this is where I tend to bring both a perspective from a senior developer and perspective from let's call it an early career developer together to make sure that they're both working together. For me, these AI tools can help an early career developers accelerate their careers so much into doing things that a mid-level or senior developer would take them years, which to be aware of that and embrace it and just figure out how do we get everybody's input and abilities into this, because this is not a how do we replace people type thing. This is how we enable everyone to work a lot better together.
Maybe on that theme, I know Carl had a question about train the trainer, and it ties into this, the fact that you have a spread of experience across your development teams in terms of seniority and experience.
Yeah. What I don't like to do is just say, let's take all the principal developers and make them the trainers that are going to go and, because sometimes there are people who are going to be a little bit better suited to be what we call them influencer developers, people who are going to go and help everybody run the organization. So what we tend to do is, especially with larger enterprises, is identify people who want to have the aptitude, understand AI, and understand the logic of this enterprise. So make a team that has capabilities that cover a lot of these different angles to help us spread the wealth across the entire organization. This is not just a top-down type thing. It's really about who can help spread and scale this.
So Esteban, are you guys selling professional services to train individuals on how to use the platform and keep up with all the improvements that Microsoft is pushing out on a weekly basis?
It's more, less than individuals, it's more programs that help enterprises adopt this at scale. So yes, we're a consulting company. We do help organizations go from, depending where they are, might be from zero or might be from one of the pilots all the way to being very successful with enterprise adoption of GitHub Copilot at scale.
So training is just a single component of the overall adoption and enablement journey.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Happy to follow up more if you want to click into that.
Yes, definitely interested.
Okay, sounds great. Hey, respecting everybody's time, we're at the top of the hour. Wanted to make sure that you will see in your inbox after the new year. In January, we're going to go into having structured conversations with your structured data using generative AI. So Fabric data agents are an exciting AI enablement capability within the Fabric platform. Because you've joined the webinar today, you'll get an invite for the next one. And the continuing AI Momentum series. Again, there was links back up in the chat for previous episodes. As always, reach out to Esteban or myself. We're always happy to have a conversation and to think through the implications and the opportunities for AI adoption with your organization. Esteban, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a real pleasure.
This was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Have a safe and prosperous new year, everybody. Thank you so much.